She dreamt of a fire and saved everyone from the mansion. Emma Sullivan wiped the sweat from her brow as she polished the massive oak dining table in the Blackwood mansion. June in Massachusetts brought stifling heat, even to the grand Victorian estate perched on the hills overlooking Boston Harbor. 3 years had passed since she'd left Ireland, with nothing but hope and her mother's worn rosary, and still she couldn't quite believe she'd secured a position in one of the most prestigious homes on the East Coast. "Sullivan!" Mrs. Graves, the head housekeeper, appeared in the doorway, her thin lips pressed into their perpetual line of disapproval. "When you're finished here, Mr. Blackwood wants the library prepared for his meeting. Make sure you dust those first editions properly. They're worth more than you'll earn in 10 lifetimes." "Yes, Mrs. Graves," Emma nodded, her Irish accent carefully muted after months of practice. In America, sounding too Irish meant fewer opportunities, more sideways glances, more "no Irish need apply" signs that still haunted doorways despite the passing years. As Mrs. Graves' footsteps faded down the hallway, Emma allowed herself a moment to gaze out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the expansive grounds. The Blackwood fortune, built on textile mills that employed thousands across New England, afforded them luxuries most could only dream of, especially during these booming years of the Roaring Twenties. That night, exhausted from a 12-hour workday, Emma collapsed onto her narrow bed in the servants' quarters. Sleep came swiftly, but it brought no peace. Flames, hungry, devouring, merciless, they climbed the grand staircase like living things, consuming the imported wallpaper, licking at oil paintings of stern-faced Blackwood ancestors. The smoke, thick and black, poured through the hallways, and the screams, Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood trapped in the master bedroom, their son James pounding against a jammed door in the east wing, Mrs. Graves stumbling blindly through the servants' quarters, trying to gather the staff. Emma jolted awake, gasping for air, her nightgown soaked with sweat. Dawn barely illuminated her small window, but sleep was now impossible. The dream had felt so real, the heat on her skin, the acrid taste of smoke in her mouth. It wasn't the first time. Back in County Cork, her grandmother had called it the sight. A gift passed through generations of Sullivan women, dreams that weren't merely dreams, but glimpses of what might come. Emma had foreseen her father's fishing accident 3 days before the sea claimed him. She'd dreamed of her cousin's twins before anyone knew she was carrying 2 lives instead of 1. In America, Emma had tried to bury this part of herself. Such old-world notions had no place in the modern scientific 1920s. Yet the dreams had followed her across the Atlantic, unbidden and unwelcome. At breakfast in the servants' hall, Emma pushed eggs around her plate, the vision of flames still dancing behind her eyes. "You look like you've seen a ghost," said Thomas, the young groundskeeper, whose smile always lingered a bit too long when Emma passed. "Just didn't sleep well," she replied, forcing a smile. "The heat," nodded Cook sympathetically. "Even the rich folks were complaining. Young Mr. James had me bring ice to his room 3 times last night." At the mention of James Blackwood, Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. Unlike his stern industrialist father, James possessed a quiet kindness that the staff noticed. He'd returned from New York 2 weeks ago, reluctantly according to the whispers below stairs. James preferred writing for literary magazines to learning the family business, much to his father's dismay. That afternoon, while dusting the library shelves, Emma heard the door open. James Blackwood entered, his dark hair slightly disheveled, a book tucked under his arm. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize anyone was in here." His voice carried none of his father's authoritative edge. "I can come back later, sir," Emma said, already backing toward the door. "No, please." He gestured to the shelves. "Don't let me interrupt your work. I just needed a quiet place to read." Emma continued dusting, hyper-aware of his presence as he settled into a leather armchair by the window. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the occasional turn of a page. "You're new, aren't you?" he asked suddenly. I've been here nearly 8 months, sir. Right. He looked embarrassed. I've been in New York most of that time. You're Emma, isn't it? Surprise flickered across her face. Yes, sir. Mrs. Graves mentioned you. Said you're one of the hardest workers she's seen. His smile was genuine. High praise from her. Thank you, sir. Emma hesitated, then added, I heard you're a writer. Something in his expression brightened. Trying to be. Father calls it a hobby, but... He shrugged. What about you? What did you do before coming here? The question, so simple yet so rare from someone of his station, caught her off guard. I worked in a textile mill when I first arrived from Ireland. Before that, I helped my mother with her seamstress work back home. James nodded thoughtfully. The mills, my father's pride and joy. Something in his tone suggested it wasn't a sentiment he shared. That night, the dream came again, more vivid, more terrifying. Emma saw the exact path of the fire, starting somewhere in the basement near the new electrical system Mr. Blackwood had proudly installed last spring. She saw the calendar on the wall, July 15th, 1928, less than a month away. In the morning, Emma's hands trembled as she served breakfast to the family. Mrs. Blackwood, elegant even at this early hour, frowned slightly at the rattling china. Careful, girl, she murmured, not unkindly. Sorry, ma'am, Emma whispered, catching James's concerned glance from across the table. Later, as she changed linens in the upstairs bedrooms, Emma heard raised voices from Mr. Blackwood's study. The door stood slightly ajar, and she couldn't help overhearing. Threats are entirely inappropriate, Mr. Blackwood's voice boomed. Tell Mr. Harrison that if he continues this campaign against my mills, I'll ensure he regrets it. Richard, please, Mrs. Blackwood's softer voice interjected. The servants will hear. Let them. Everyone should know what kind of man Daniel Harrison is. First, he tries to undercut my contracts, then spreads rumors about working conditions, and now these veiled threats. Emma quickly moved away from the door as footsteps approached, but the exchange lodged in her mind. That night, as the dream came for the third time, new details emerged. A face in the shadows outside the mansion just before the flames began. A man Emma had glimpsed once when he'd visited Mr. Blackwood for a tense meeting. Daniel Harrison. The dream wasn't just warning of a fire, it was revealing something far more sinister. The next morning, Emma awoke with a pounding heart and purpose burning in her mind. The dream had revealed something new. The fire would start exactly 12 days from now. She needed to act, but who would believe an Irish maid's dreams? In America, she'd learned quickly that her accent alone marked her as superstitious and backward in many people's eyes. During her morning duties, Emma found herself assigned to clean the study where James often worked. He sat at the desk, papers scattered before him, but his pen was still. "Good morning," he said, offering that same kind smile that never failed to make her pulse quicken. "Good morning, sir. I can come back if you're busy." "No, please stay, I'm stuck anyway." He gestured to his manuscript pages. "Words aren't flowing today." Emma gathered her courage. "Mr. Blackwood. James, please. At least when it's just us. Mr. Blackwood makes me feel like my father." "James," she said, the familiarity strange on her tongue. "May I ask you something unusual?" He looked intrigued. "Of course. Do you believe people can see things before they happen?" His eyebrows rose. "You mean like premonitions? Dreams that come true," she clarified, her voice barely above a whisper. James considered this, surprisingly without dismissal. "My mother's family has Pennsylvania Dutch roots. They have all sorts of beliefs about signs and portents." He leaned forward. "Why do you ask?" Emma's hands twisted her apron. "I've been having dreams. About this house, about a fire that starts in the basement near the new electrical system. I've seen it 3 nights now, and each time it gets clearer." She swallowed hard. In my dream, it happens on July 15th. She expected ridicule, or at best, gentle dismissal. Instead, James studied her with genuine curiosity. And you've had dreams like this before? Dreams that came true? Emma nodded, back in Ireland. My grandmother called it the sight. It's been in our family for generations. What exactly happens in this dream? The words tumbled out, the origin of the fire, how it spread, the trapped family members, the specific date. When she finished, she added shakily, "And last night, I saw something else. A man outside, watching the house just before it started. I think it was Mr. Harrison." James's expression darkened. "Daniel Harrison, my father's competitor?" "I overheard your father mention threats from him yesterday," Emma admitted. "I wasn't trying to listen, but their rivalry has gotten worse lately," James said, running a hand through his hair. "Harrison's been losing contracts to my father, and there are rumors he's nearly bankrupt." A knock at the study door made them both jump. Mrs. Graves stood there, eyes narrowing at their proximity. "Sullivan, Mrs. Blackwood needs you to prepare the blue guest room. Mr. Blackwood's sister is arriving tomorrow." Her gaze shifted to James. "And your father is asking for you, sir." After Mrs. Graves left, James whispered quickly, "Meet me in the garden at sunset, the bench by the old oak. We need to finish this conversation." That evening, as dusk painted the sky in watercolor hues, Emma slipped away from the servants' dinner. The garden was deserted except for James, who paced nervously by the massive oak tree that had stood sentinel over Blackwood land for centuries. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began without preamble, "about the fire." "You think I'm mad," Emma said flatly. "No." His response was immediate. "I think there are things in this world we don't fully understand." He hesitated. "My mother's grandmother was said to have similar gifts. The family doesn't speak of it. It doesn't fit with my father's modern industrialist image, but my mother told me stories when I was young." Hope flickered in Emma's chest. "Then you believe me?" "I believe you believe it," he said carefully, "and given the tensions with Harrison, I think we should at least investigate. The electrical system is new, and the electrician did mention some concerns that my father dismissed." A twig snapped nearby, and both turned to see Thomas the groundskeeper watching them with undisguised suspicion. "Evening, Mr. Blackwood." "Emma." His use of her first name carried a deliberate familiarity. "Thomas." James nodded. "Just discussing some household matters." Thomas's eyes narrowed slightly. "In the garden, after hours." "That will be all, Thomas," James said firmly. After Thomas retreated, James turned back to Emma. "We need to be careful. If my father heard about this, about your dreams, he'd dismiss it immediately. And if he thought I was entertaining such ideas—" "I understand," Emma said. "But we don't have much time." "Tomorrow," James promised. "I'll find a reason to inspect the electrical system in the basement, and I'll look into Harrison's whereabouts around the 15th. As Emma turned to leave, James caught her hand. The touch sent warmth cascading through her. "Thank you," he said softly, "for having the courage to speak up." That night, for the first time in days, Emma slept without dreams of fire. Instead, she dreamed of James Blackwood's hands holding hers, of conversations that crossed the rigid boundaries of class and background, of a world where her gift was not a burden, but a bridge. Morning brought reality crashing back. At breakfast, Mrs. Graves announced that Mrs. Blackwood's annual summer gala would take place on July 15th, the very date of the fire in Emma's dream. The mansion would be filled with Boston's elite, making any potential disaster even more catastrophic. Throughout the day, Emma watched anxiously for an opportunity to speak with James, but he was summoned to his father's textile mill for an emergency. By evening, when he hadn't returned, a familiar dread settled in Emma's stomach. That night, The fire dream returned with new intensity. This time she saw James trapped in his father's study, surrounded by flames as he tried desperately to reach something in his father's safe, documents of some kind. And outside, half hidden in the shadows of the trees, stood Daniel Harrison, watching the mansion burn with cold satisfaction. Emma woke with a strangled cry, knowing with bone-deep certainty that the dream wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a countdown. 7 days remained until July 15th. Emma's nerves frayed with each passing hour as she went through her duties mechanically, jumping at every creak and groan of the old mansion. James had returned late the previous night, and she hadn't yet found an opportunity to speak with him privately. As she dusted the formal dining room, where preparations for the gala were already underway, Mrs. Blackwood entered with her sister-in-law, Margaret. "The east wall would be perfect for the orchestra," Mrs. Blackwood was saying, "and we'll need to bring up the good crystal from the basement storage." Emma's hands stilled. The basement. That could be her chance to investigate the electrical system. "Sullivan," Mrs. Blackwood called, noticing her. "We'll need all the Tiffany glassware brought up and polished before the 15th. You can start this afternoon." "Yes, ma'am," Emma replied, silently thanking Providence for the opportunity. Later, armed with a list of items to retrieve, Emma descended the narrow servants' stairs to the basement. The vast underground space stretched beneath the entire mansion, divided into storage rooms, wine cellars, and utility areas. The new electrical panel had been installed in a small room near the back, where the old coal furnace still stood as a backup for New England's harsh winters. Emma's heart raced as she approached the electrical room. She had no technical knowledge, but her dreams had shown the fire starting here. The door was unlocked, and she slipped inside, finding herself surrounded by a bewildering array of switches, fuses, and wiring. At first glance, nothing seemed amiss. Then she noticed a small puddle on the floor beneath one of the panels. Water and electricity. Even Emma knew that was dangerous. Looking up, she saw a pipe running along the ceiling with a slight drip. The water was falling dangerously close to exposed wiring, where the panel's cover didn't quite fit properly. "What are you doing in here?" Emma whirled around to find Thomas standing in the doorway, his expression suspicious. "Mrs. Blackwood sent me to fetch items from storage," she said quickly. "I thought I heard a strange noise in here." Thomas stepped closer, looking at the puddle she'd been examining. "That pipe's been leaking for weeks. I told Mr. Blackwood's man about it, but they said the plumber can't come until after the gala." He frowned. "You still haven't explained why you're in the electrical room." "The noise," Emma repeated lamely. "I was just concerned." "Like you were concerned during your private meeting with Mr. James in the garden." His tone turned bitter. "I've seen how you look at him, Emma. It won't end well for you." Heat flooded Emma's cheeks. "You misunderstand." "Do I? An Irish maid and the son of one of Boston's wealthiest families?" He shook his head. "People like us don't get happy endings with people like them." Before Emma could respond, footsteps echoed on the stone floor outside, and James appeared in the doorway. "Thomas, Mother's looking for you. Something about the garden arrangements for the gala." Thomas hesitated, looking between them, then left with a stiff nod. "I've been trying to find you," James said once they were alone. "I checked the electrical system yesterday but didn't notice anything concerning." He followed Emma's gaze to the puddle. "Except that, apparently." "The water is dripping right above these wires," Emma explained. "In my dream, the fire started here." James knelt to examine the setup more closely. "This installation was rushed. Father was eager to showcase his embrace of modern technology at the gala." He stood, his expression grave. "I'll speak to him about getting it fixed immediately." "Will he listen?" Emma asked. "Probably not if I mention your dreams," James admitted. "But I can emphasize the danger without bringing that into it." They were interrupted by Mrs. Graves calling for Emma from the main basement area. Before they parted, James whispered, "There's something else." I looked into Harrison. He's scheduled to be in Boston on the 15th, supposedly for a meeting with investors, but given the threats my father mentioned... That evening, Emma was serving dinner when Mr. Blackwood brought up the electrical issue. "James tells me there's a water leak near the new electrical panel," he said between bites of roast duck. "Insists it needs immediate attention." "Perhaps we should postpone the gala," Mrs. Blackwood suggested, "just until we're certain everything is safe." Mr. Blackwood waved a dismissive hand. "Nonsense, Eleanor. The electrician assured me the system is perfectly sound. Besides, half of Boston society has already accepted our invitations." But Richard..." "I won't hear another word about it," he said firmly. "This house has stood for 70 years without incident. A small leak won't bring it down now." Emma saw James's jaw tighten, but he remained silent. That night, Emma's dream changed again. This time, she saw specific faces in the gala crowd: Mrs. Blackwood's elderly mother, confined to a wheelchair, the mayor and his wife. Even the governor was expected to attend. And something new. In her dream, Emma saw James arguing with his father near the study shortly before the fire began, while a figure that looked like Thomas lurked nearby, listening. When Emma awoke, a new determination filled her. If Mr. Blackwood wouldn't listen to reason, she would need to take matters into her own hands. But she couldn't do it alone. The next day, she sought out James in the library. "Your father won't cancel the gala," she said without preamble. "No." His frustration was evident. "And now he's suspicious of why I'm suddenly concerned about the electrical system. Then we need a different approach." Emma took a deep breath. "We need to find evidence of Harrison's involvement. If we can prove he's planning something..." "That's dangerous, Emma." James's voice was low with concern. "If Harrison really is behind this..." "More dangerous than letting a house full of people burn?" Emma countered. "My dreams have never been wrong before." James studied her for a long moment. "There's a dinner tomorrow night at the Harvard Club. Harrison will be there, along with my father. I'm expected to attend." "That could be our chance to look for evidence at Harrison's office or home," Emma suggested. "Breaking and entering is a serious crime, Emma." "So is arson and attempted murder," she replied steadily. James ran a hand through his hair, a habit Emma had come to recognize when he was thinking deeply. "There might be another way. Harrison's secretary, Miss Palmer, has been sending me rather obvious signals for months. I've never encouraged her, but..." "You could use her interest to get information," Emma finished, ignoring the twinge of jealousy the suggestion provoked. "I'll telephone her tomorrow, perhaps suggest lunch." He didn't look happy about the plan. "Meanwhile, see if you can find out more about that leak in the basement. And Emma, be careful around Thomas. I don't trust his interest in you or in our conversations." As Emma left the library, she nearly collided with Mrs. Blackwood. "Oh, I'm sorry, Ma'am." Mrs. Blackwood studied her with keen eyes. "You've been spending quite a lot of time in the library lately, Sullivan." "Just cleaning, Ma'am?" Emma said quickly. Mrs. Blackwood didn't seem convinced. "My son seems to find himself in need of the library at precisely the same times." When Emma remained silent, she added, "James has always had a soft heart, too soft, his father would say." "Mrs. Blackwood, Be careful, girl. Dreams can be powerful things, but they can also lead us astray." With that cryptic remark, she glided away, leaving Emma frozen in shock. How did Mrs. Blackwood know about her dreams? Had James told his mother? Or did the lady of the house have her own sources of information? The mystery would have to wait. 5 days remained until July 15th, and Emma could feel time slipping away like sand through her fingers. July 13th dawned clear and hot, the kind of summer day that made the grand mansion's stone walls a blessed relief from the heat outside. Only 2 days remained before the gala, and Emma's anxiety had reached a fever pitch. Each time she passed the basement door, she imagined she could smell smoke. James had met with Harrison's secretary the previous day, and Emma was desperate to learn what he had discovered. Her opportunity came mid-morning when she was sent to deliver fresh towels to the guest rooms. James intercepted her in the upstairs hallway, glancing around to ensure they were alone. "Miss Palmer was surprisingly forthcoming," he said in a low voice. "It seems Harrison has been making quiet threats against my father for weeks. She overheard him on the telephone telling someone to be ready for the 15th and that Blackwood will finally get what's coming to him." Emma's blood ran cold. "That confirms it then?" "Not necessarily. It could mean many things." James sighed. "But combined with your dreams, I can't ignore the possibility." "Have you spoken with your mother?" Emma asked. "Her comment to me yesterday. She seemed to know about the dreams." James looked surprised. "I haven't told her anything, but—" He hesitated. "My mother has always been unusually perceptive. The Pennsylvania Dutch heritage I mentioned, it runs stronger in her than she admits. Then she might believe us." "Perhaps, but she won't defy my father openly. Their marriage has always been," he trailed off, "complicated." A door opened down the hall and they quickly separated. Emma continued her duties, mind racing with possible solutions. That afternoon, as she helped prepare guest rooms for the gala attendees who would be staying overnight, she overheard a conversation between Mr. Blackwood and the butler. "Harrison called again, sir," the butler reported. "He insisted on speaking with you." "I have nothing to say to that man," Mr. Blackwood replied coldly, "not after he tried to bribe 3 of my foremen to sabotage production last month." "He mentioned something about evidence, sir. Said if you didn't meet with him before the gala, everyone in Boston would know what really happened at the Springfield Mill last winter." Mr. Blackwood's face darkened. "Get out, Wilson, and not a word of this to anyone, understand?" The Springfield Mill. Emma remembered hearing whispers among the staff about an accident there. Several workers killed, the incident quickly hushed up with generous payments to the families. Could that be what Harrison had evidence of? Something Mr. Blackwood wanted desperately to keep hidden. That night, Emma's dream was the most vivid yet. She saw Harrison meeting with Thomas in the woods behind the mansion, passing him something small and metallic. She saw Thomas entering the electrical room in the basement just hours before the gala, and she saw James, trapped in the study as flames engulfed the staircase, frantically trying to open his father's safe. Emma woke with absolute certainty. Thomas was Harrison's accomplice. The groundskeeper, bitter about his station in life, and perhaps jealous of Emma's interactions with James, had been recruited to ensure the electrical accident happened as planned. Dawn was still hours away, but Emma couldn't wait. She slipped from her bed and crept down to the servants' hall, intending to find James. Instead, she found Mrs. Blackwood sitting alone at the kitchen table, a cup of tea before her. "I couldn't sleep either," the older woman said calmly, as if finding a maid wandering the house at 3 in the morning was perfectly normal. "The dreams are getting worse, aren't they?" Emma froze. "Ma'am?" "Sit down, Emma." It wasn't a request. "My grandmother had the sight, just as yours did. I recognized it in you the moment you started having the dreams about the fire." "How did you know?" Emma whispered, sinking onto a chair. "I have a touch of it myself. Not as strong as yours, but enough to sense when others share the gift." Mrs. Blackwood's elegant hands cupped her teacup. "Tell me what you've seen." Emma hesitated only briefly before relating everything: the fire, Harrison's involvement, Thomas's betrayal, the danger to everyone in the house, especially James. "My husband won't listen," Mrs. Blackwood said when Emma finished. "He's too proud, too certain of his own judgment. But I believe you." She reached across the table and took Emma's hand. "We women with the sight must trust each other. What can we do? The gala is tomorrow night. We act." Mrs. Blackwood's voice was steel beneath silk. Richard keeps documents in his safe, evidence of the Springfield accident. That's what Harrison wants destroyed in the fire, along with anyone who might know the truth. She stood, suddenly every inch the formidable society matron. I'm going to have a conversation with Thomas this morning. Meanwhile, you find James. Tell him to get those documents from his father's safe today while Richard is at the mill. He won't just hand over the combination, Emma protested. Mrs. Blackwood smiled thinly. James won't need it. I've known the combination for years. Richard thinks his secrets are his alone, but a wise wife always keeps her eyes open. The day of the gala dawned bright and clear. Emma moved through her duties in a state of hypervigilance, watching for Thomas. But the groundskeeper was nowhere to be found. Thomas didn't report for work this morning, the head gardener complained to Mrs. Graves, left me short-handed on the most important day of the summer. Emma sought out James as soon as she could slip away. Your mother knows about the dreams, she told him. She believes us. She wants you to get the documents from your father's safe. I already have them, James replied, looking grim. They prove father knew the Springfield Mill's safety violations were dangerous, but he delayed repairs to save money. When the accident happened, he falsified records to cover it up. That's what Harrison wants destroyed in the fire, along with anyone who might know the truth. Thomas has disappeared, James added. Mother spoke with him early this morning. Whatever she said sent him running. As evening approached and guests began to arrive for the gala, Emma felt a strange calm descend. She had done everything possible to prevent her dream from coming true. Now it was time to see if fate could be changed. The mansion transformed under the glow of electric lights and the sparkle of jewelry worn by Boston's elite. Emma, dressed in her best uniform, served champagne to guests who looked through her as if she were invisible. From across the room, she caught James's eye. He gave her a subtle nod. Just before midnight, as the orchestra played a lively Charleston, Emma slipped away to check the electrical room one last time. The basement was deserted, and when she opened the door to the electrical panel, she found the leak had been fixed, the floor dry. Relief washed over her, followed immediately by suspicion. Who had fixed it, and why hadn't they mentioned it? A noise behind her made Emma whirl around. Thomas stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. You were right, he said flatly, about the fire, about everything. Thomas, Harrison paid me to make sure the wiring failed during the gala. Said no one would get hurt, just some property damage to humiliate Mr. Blackwood during his big night. He looked disgusted with himself. I didn't know he was planning to trap people inside. Mrs. Blackwood spoke to you. She knew things she couldn't possibly know, like you with your dreams. He shook his head. I fixed the leak. Disconnected the wires Harrison wanted tampered with, but he's still out there, Emma, and he's angry. As if summoned by Thomas's words, a crash sounded from upstairs, followed by shouts. Emma and Thomas raced up the servants' stairs to find chaos in the main hall. Daniel Harrison stood in the center of the room, a gun in his hand, facing down Mr. Blackwood. You think you're untouchable, Harrison was shouting. But everyone here is going to know what you did at Springfield. James stepped forward, a folder in his hand. It's over, Harrison. We have the original documents, and copies have been sent to the authorities. Father will face consequences for Springfield, but your plan to commit mass murder ends now. Mrs. Blackwood moved to her husband's side, her face composed despite the drama unfolding. Richard, it's time to accept responsibility. For a moment, the scene hung in perfect tension. Then Mr. Blackwood's shoulders slumped. You're right, Eleanor. You've always been right. He turned to the stunned crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I owe you all an apology and an explanation. As police officers arrived to take Harrison into custody, Emma found herself standing beside James in a quiet corner of the hall. Your dreams saved everyone, he said softly. You changed fate. We changed it, Emma corrected. together. Mrs. Blackwood approached them, her social mask firmly back in place. "Well done, both of you." She looked at Emma with newfound respect. "We must discuss your future at Blackwood Mansion, Miss Sullivan. I believe your talents are wasted in housekeeping." Later that night, as the last guests departed and the household settled into exhausted quiet, Emma stood on the terrace, gazing up at stars that seemed brighter than she'd ever seen them. The mansion still stood, solid and undamaged. The fire that had haunted her dreams had been prevented. James found her there, a gentle smile playing across his features. "No more dreams of fire." "No," Emma confirmed, "just dreams of possibility now." He took her hand, a gesture that would have been scandalous hours earlier, but now felt right, necessary even. "My father will face justice for Springfield, but he's agreed to make amends to the families and to implement real safety measures in all his mills." "And you? Will you return to New York to your writing?" "Eventually." James's eyes held hers. "But I have reasons to stay in Boston now, stories that need telling, about Irish immigrants with extraordinary gifts, about courage that transcends class boundaries, about dreams that save lives." As dawn broke over Blackwood Mansion, Emma Sullivan, daughter of immigrants, bearer of ancient gifts, changer of fates, allowed herself to believe in a new kind of American dream, one where the future wasn't predetermined by birth or circumstance, but shaped by courage, truth, and the willingness to trust in possibilities yet unseen.